Beijing sets the stage for constitutional reform. A warning about a problem caused by the influx of tourists, and a search for a breakthrough in Ukraine's crisis.
Good evening. The chairman of the National People's Congress Standing Committee today specified Beijing's stance on political reform in Hong Kong. Zhang Dejiang said bringing overseas-style democracy to the SAR may be disastrous. Jenny Lam reports.
The chief executive election in Hong Kong is a matter of sovereignty and security for the entire country, and it's crucial for Hong Kong's long-term prosperity and stability. That's according to officials and local NPC deputies who quoted Zhang Dejiang as saying after their meeting in Beijing today. The chairman of the NPC Standing Committee and Beijing's officials in charge of the territory's affairs specify the mechanism when it comes to political reform. They involve the so-called one stance and three compliances. Under the one stance, Beijing supports the gradual democratic development of Hong Kong in accordance with the Basic Law. But it has to meet certain conditions. They are to comply with the Basic Law and the relevant decisions by the NPC Standing Committee, to comply with Hong Kong's realities and actual situation, and the future CE must love Hong Kong and the country. Elaborating on what Zhang meant by the realities of Hong Kong is that different places have different situations. NPC member Ma Fengkuo quoted Zhang as saying the overseas style of democracy may not suit Hong Kong. Simply copying foreign models may put the territory in the trap of democracy, which in turn could be disastrous. Constitutional reform and economic development, Ma added, go hand in hand. So there should be greater exchanges between the mainland and Hong Kong to try to win the hearts and minds of local people and to boost cross-border harmony. Another NPC deputy, Maria Tam, said Zhang warned that there are people who want to cause chaos in Hong Kong. Hong Kong is just a special administrative region in China, she explains, and does not have its own sovereignty. Universal suffrage is only granted to Hong Kong by Beijing, she adds, and not the result of struggle by any group or party. And NPC Standing Committee member Rita Fan believes that chaos refers to the Occupy Central movement. She cited Zhang's warning that using universal suffrage as an excuse to cause trouble in Hong Kong will not be conducive on the way forward. Jenny Lam, TVB News.
Pan-Democrats here in Hong Kong have criticized Zhang Dejiang's comments on political reform. They say the remarks show Beijing is preventing what they describe as genuine universal suffrage to be implemented.
For many years, we've discussed universal suffrage. We understand that it has to comply with the Basic Law and also the National People's Congress Standing Committee's decision. But it should also comply with the International Covenant on Civil and Political Rights. Up to now, nobody has ever raised the specter of having universal suffrage would endanger national security. I mean, this is crazy.
I urge the state leadership to trust Hong Kong people. If you insist on pre-screening, you are sending a clearer than clear message to Hong Kong people that you are not trusting us. With all these categoric statements falling from the state leadership and our SAR leaders, people will see more and more clearly that this consultation is faked. It is not for real.
The NPC Standing Committee chairman has also stressed the need to resolve the conflicts caused by an influx of mainland tourists here in Hong Kong. And as Ronnie Samtani reports, some local lawmakers are urging the government to adopt measures to ease overcrowding and reduce the public's grievances.
How many mainland tourists can Hong Kong handle? This morning, Acting Chief Executive Carrie Lam met with legislators from the tourism, wholesale and retail, catering and transport constituencies to discuss the issue. The lawmakers said recent protests against mainland visitors damaged Hong Kong's reputation. They also called on the government to implement measures to reduce overcrowding, especially in tourist hotspots such as Tsim Sha Tsui and Causeway Bay.
A lot of these tourists, after they shopping, they carry a lot of bags and they're waiting on the street, waiting either for a taxi or waiting for a tour bus. And there's no parking space available. So a lot of these buses or taxis, they double park or triple park, and that's causing the traffic, a jam. So we suggest the government try to provide more parking space for tour buses and taxis waiting.
Fang quoted Lam as saying she will be meeting with various departments to discuss the proposals. Fang added that in the long run, the government must increase the number of tourist attractions, shopping centers, and transportation facilities to accommodate more tourists and to reduce the pressure on current facilities. A top mainland official also addressed the issue today. A local deputy to the National People's Congress, Michael Tian, quoted NPC Standing Committee Chairman Zhang Dejiang as saying he had told the Hong Kong and Macau Affairs Office to work with the China National Tourism Administration and the SAR government to study Hong Kong's capacity to receive tourists. Zhang believes conflict sparked by the influx of visitors cannot be ignored. Ronnie Samtani, TVB News.
The central government says it is more important to create jobs than to achieve its economic growth target. At today's press conference on the sidelines of the NPC session, Finance Minister Lu Jiwei said employment is our most important goal. Beijing's target is to create 10 million urban jobs this year, and Lu said the figure could reach as high as 13 million. And he said economic growth below the official target of 7.5% may be acceptable. Lu said GDP growth of 7.2% or 7.3% this year can still be counted within the target range.
The European Union has frozen the assets of ousted Ukrainian President Viktor Yanukovych and 17 other officials on suspicion of human rights violations and misuse of state funds. Meantime, there are now reports the Parliament of Crimea has voted in favor of the region becoming part of the Russian Federation and that it wants to hold a referendum. This as efforts continue to find a diplomatic solution for the crisis in Ukraine after Western diplomats failed to bring the Russian and Ukrainian foreign ministers together for face-to-face talks. Alan Buchnia reports.
Ukraine's foreign minister Andrei Dechesaya said he had been hoping to brief his Russian counterpart Sergei Lavrov on a Ukrainian plan to offer the predominantly Russian territory of Crimea more autonomy. Crimea is the major flashpoint in the crisis in Ukraine, where thousands of Russian troops are said to have been deployed.
We are continuing our consultations and we believe that we will come to some positive outcome.
When asked why he didn't meet with Lavrov, Dechesaya shrugged and said, "Ask Lavrov." The sticking point is Russia's view that former Ukrainian President Viktor Yanukovych was ousted in a coup and its refusal to recognize the new regime in Kiev. U.S. Secretary of State John Kerry said the fact that there was no face-to-face meeting came as no surprise.
I had no expectation, zero expectation that today that kind of a meeting would take place. We renew our call for Russia to speak directly with the government of Ukraine to send troops back to their bases.
Kerry is set for further talks with Lavrov in Rome today, and he expressed some optimism.
I think that we have a number of ideas on the table. I personally feel as if I have something concrete to take back and talk to President Obama about.
Meanwhile, tensions remain high in Crimea. A UN special envoy has been forced to leave. Robert Seri was threatened by 10 to 15 armed men as he was leaving the naval headquarters in Crimea. He was later seen taking refuge in a coffee shop. From there, he got into a sports utility vehicle and went to the airport and flew to Istanbul. Alan Buchnia, TVB News.
Venezuela has marked the first anniversary of the death of former President Hugo Chavez. But the commemorations have been mixed with more street protests as the country continues to battle an economic crisis that shows no sign of ending. James Aiken reports.
It's a time of affection and nostalgia for the man Venezuelans call El Comandante, who died on March 5th a year ago. As the nation struggles with weeks of unrest, followers of the late socialist leader are flooding streets across the country to begin a 10-day commemoration. Among the leaders honoring Chavez are his friends and leftist allies, the presidents of Bolivia, Nicaragua, and Cuba. Tributes are also being paid across much of Latin America. Argentine President Cristina Fernandez remembered Chavez for his efforts to fight poverty and unite the region. The anniversary is also welcome distraction for the beleaguered government of Nicolas Maduro, which has been battered by weeks of protests. The man who succeeded Chavez used a fiery speech to attack the United States and Panama for what he called an open conspiracy against him. He also announced he was breaking off all relations with Panama after that government asked the Organization of American States to discuss Venezuela's crisis. Meanwhile, anti-government protesters clashed with police in parts of the capital and were met by more tear gas and rubber bullets. A year after Chavez succumbed to cancer, Maduro is facing an explosion of anti-government demonstrations during which at least 18 people have died. During a tumultuous 14-year rule, Chavez won popular support by using a mix of hard-left politics, sweeping nationalizations, generous government spending, and state control over the economy. But his legacy left behind deep structural problems that Maduro has been unable to fix, including soaring inflation, deteriorating social services, and rampant crime. For now, the military seems to be remaining loyal to Maduro's government. The demonstrations have not spread, and there's no indication the protests could topple Maduro at this point. But there are also no signs they're going away. James Aiken, TVB News.
Still to come in the broadcast tonight, Li Ka-shing speaks out against populism. England beats Denmark in international friendly. And check out some very special flowers.